The world can be revolved around many things: life, death, happiness, sadness, fear, anger. Today I bring you multiple stories from Reddit, and I will talk and read scary stories that I believe will be a fun thing. Sit back, relax, and join with me. Scary stories with Neo. I am finding these stories on r/horror stories. Our first story will be from u/Salem Nightmare 666. Help me. My mind races as I wake up in a house I don't recognize, and that isn't my own. I slowly get up off the hardwooden floor and look around at the unfamiliar walls. I walk towards the closet door and reach for the handle, but as I do, the door opens on its own. I back off and convince myself that I blacked out and opened the door, and then I stepped through the room. I entered. Didn't look like the one I saw through the doorway. I panicked and looked around frantically, not understanding what is going on. After calming myself down, I walk towards the table in the middle of the room and pick up the note carefully placed on the table, and it reads, "If you are reading this, you have picked the right door. Unfortunately, I can't tell you about others, as I haven't made it that far, but I can tell you about this house. It used to be owned by scientists that experimented on by fabric of reality. He made the house so every room will be different, and so that the house will be infinite unless you go through the right doors. There are monsters that roam the halls. Be careful. Bye." After reading the most, I work my way to the door on my right, and it happens again. The door opens by itself. I slowly walk through. When I am met with the stares of a creature with sharp claws, jagged teeth, 4 arms, and a skeletal body, I pause in fear, only being able to stare at this creature. I don't know what it is, but I can sense its hunger and intent to kill. After breaking myself out of my frozen state, I back off and slowly close the door. Close the door, but it wouldn't budge. After losing hope, I looked around for a weapon. Out of desperation, I break the table leg off, using all my strength, and then I opened the door. As I did, the creature came storming in and knocked me on the ground. Unable to move, I stare into its non-existent eyes and take a deep breath, accepting my death. With this screeching scream, it calls me from head to toe, and I take my final breath and final screams. My mind races as I wake up. I don't recognize, and that isn't my own. I slowly get up off the hardwood floor and look around at the unfamiliar walls. I walk towards the closet door and reach through the handle, but as I do so, the door opens on its own. I back off and convince myself that I blacked out and open the door. I step through, but the room I entered didn't look like the one I saw through the doorway. Help me. That is our first story. Again, it's from r/horror stories, and it's posted by u/Salem Nightmare 666. Our next story will be from r/horror stories again on Reddit. It will be posted by u/Amanacrase, I think. So let's begin our story. So for reference, I was around 5 to 7 years old, and my brother was 12 to 14 years old. I used to live in this really big old blue house in Nebraska with me, my brother, my mom, and my dad. I was pretty young at the time, so a decent amount of this is really foggy to me. and I was told to me by my brother. The big blue house I lived in was very haunted. When we first moved there, it wasn't that bad. Just things moving by themselves, weird noises. You know, the normal haunting stuff. But after a month or so of living in that house, things started to take a turn for the worst. I was a decently big horror fan. I had only seen like 4 horror movies. That included The Hills Have Eyes, 1 and 2, and 2 others. My earliest memory of living in that house was me in the den watching The Hills Have Eyes. I would always sleep in the den downstairs, and my brother would sleep in his room upstairs. I would get really bad sleep paralysis at night, to the point of someone would have to put me in a tub of cold water to wake me up. It was like being trapped in the sleeping realm, not able to do anything, while a creature that I couldn't have even imagined at the time. These creatures still haunt my memories 12 years later. I would get sleep paralysis every night, and someone would have to sleep with me in the den because I would not go upstairs. Things only got worse for my brother. He was not allowed to sleep downstairs with me because my dad was abusive towards him. So my brother would sleep upstairs by himself with the door open and his hallway light on all the time. But around the time when I started getting sleep paralysis, he started seeing a man with a hat outside his door. Obviously, he hid under the covers because he was a child at the time. The man would just stand there staring at him for hours on end. One night, the man was at the door. He thought it was over. He turned over to turn his bedside lamp off, and the man was right in his room. My parents went upstairs and found no one. My dad told my brother to go back to bed, and so he went back upstairs, terrified as he was. After the experience, my brother only saw the man at his door, and that was it. Nowhere else. The sleep paralysis kept happening with me, but for the past few weeks we stayed at that house. I started sleep talking, and not the sleep talking that is just gibberish, the sleep talking that had full conversations with someone else. After we moved, I occasionally got sleep paralysis, but I could easily snap myself out of it. The sleep talking stopped right after we moved. The moving of objects and weird noises kept following my brother and I until a few years ago. It stopped for me because I had started practicing witchcraft. My brother, on the other hand, lives with it every day. I offered to cleanse his house, but he doesn't want it. He always tells me about the man with the hat, and now he sees him out of the corner of his eye. It's been 12 years since we moved from that house, and he still tells me about the Hat Man every time I go and see him. Okay, so that was the second story of our stream, but you can always use this as a podcast. I think I'm going to do around 5, and then I'm going to switch off and do a normal stream with VR or Minecraft, whatever I choose. But this story was from a mountain crows, and it's from r/horror stories once again. And so let me grab another story. This one was posted by J. Persian Ran on r/horror stories. Darkness. What lurks in the darkness of our minds is a mystery to most of us. It comes as no surprise that darkness affects everyone in different ways, from kids to teenagers and even adults. I, for one, am still iffy when it comes to being in the dark. From the age of 13, I always felt like someone was watching me. from the shadows, or something dark, something inhuman. This gave me a feeling of paranoia, and I felt like I had to keep looking over my shoulders to make sure that nothing was following me. I remember this one night. I was in my bed listening to the rain as it struck my window, the flashes of lightning flooding my room, following a thunderous roar. It was soothing to me, as I loved watching lightning storms because it was a form of art created by the earth. After a while of listening, watching, I began to get sleepy, so I decided to lay my head on my pillow and rest for the night. Later that same night, I suddenly woke up to this eerie feeling that something was watching me. It was oddly quiet for a stormy night, and when I tried to get up, I turned my light on. I couldn't move. I couldn't move. It felt like something was holding my body down. I turned my gaze to the foot of my bed, and there it was, a huge dark mass hovering by my feet. I tried to scream, but it felt like my voice was taken from me. Nothing but the feeling of pain and fear filled the room, and as this thing got closer, I could hear my beating faster and faster. This was it. This is how I'm going to die. This thing, whatever it was, began to snarl and growl. It was now hovering over my body. Within a moment of sheer panic, my body shot up and my voice came back, and I fucking screamed out loud because causing my parents to wake, and they entered my room and turned on my lights. I was sitting in the corner holding my knees close to my chest and hyperventilating. My parents assured me that it was only a nightmare, but it's hard trying to accept that in my mind. Was it? Or was it something else entirely? And I just so happened to get lucky and fight it off with all my strength. The darkness. It's still there in my room, waiting. That story was posted on r/horror stories. It was posted by J. Perselian. I can't really say that. Let me find you another story. I am picking these stories at random, so when I read them to you, I react the exact same way, except I have a terrible voice, so it makes my voice sound very dead. I'm trying to make that. Let's do Little Monsters. It's a very long one, so this will be our final. I am doing very few, trying to keep this short. You don't have to be watching me, I'm just sitting here like this. I'm going to show you a little bit around what I did. I will be using this place to post scary content. So, let's continue. This was posted on r/horror stories by Bloody Spaghetti. Little Monsters. I fucking hate kids. I hate all the kids that are not mine. That's an extreme thing to say, but what can I do? My childhood was tough. A few kids used to bully my brother at school all the time. Worse than that, they beat and battered us almost daily. We were small boys, physically, so we couldn't really defend ourselves. I turned out to be a late bloomer. Now I'm definitely adult-sized. We were the targets, not because of our size, because of our names. Our parents named us Joe Gallo and Veslev, after the medieval rulers. Weird names, I know, but it is what it is. Unfortunately, my brother couldn't handle the abuse for long. He found Dad's gun and put a bullet through his skull. I felt my head explode the day he did it. It was the worst migraine I've ever had. I guess there was a telepathic link between us, or something, as old cliche goes. It could have been an emotional strain too. I don't know. The adults deemed it was an unfortunate accident. No one believed the 11-year-old would, and he said his twin brother killed himself because of bullying was impossible, especially for Dad. His sons were men, not boys. We ended up moving, and I haven't seen my classmates in a few decades. Ever since the day Vyacheslav killed himself, I started hating children. They're just so awful, almost maniacal. They do not understand the harm they're capable of. Children are little monsters. My class had a reunion recently. My wife convinced me to go. Convinced is a light way to put it. She forced me to do it. She knows her way with words. I might just say she's a witch. I ended up having a lovely time, and most of my former classmates grew up to be fine people. They all used to be little shits, but now they were first-class citizens. Time seemed to tame these monstrosities. Ironing out all the wrinkles of mischief and cruelty. Well, in most cases, I've mingled with a bunch of people I had no recollections of, drank a bunch of alcohol, and even danced with a few women who seemed familiar enough. Time didn't fix my head, though. Ever since that day, something went wrong with me. From time to time, I hear a voice. It's deep and gruff. It's barely intelligible. It's usually murmur stuff I kind of understand. Sometimes the voice says something painfully clear. That evening, the voice told me to get out. It actually screamed at me to get out. The experiences left me a bit shaken, and I left the building. I went outside and smoked a cigarette. My head was pounding, and I felt myself spinning. The nicotine helped me feel a little better. Returning to the reunion party, there was a mess. People were running around screaming and panicking. The tables and chairs flew in the air. I think I heard a gunshot echo through the hall. I am uncertain, though. My brain was too busy processing what was in front of him at that thing. A monster tearing apart a man right in front of me. A hairy parody of a humanoid creature. Thick, black, bushy fur covered the entirety of its body, along with a wild mane that hung loosely over its head. It crouched on all fours. The creature's joint anatomy was all wrong, long, oversized. Sticky, yellow nails adored its fingers. The beast was spraying blood and gore, left and right, as it tore chunks out of the man's torso. Someone tried pulling me away from the beast. I just shoved them away. I didn't even notice who it was. Then another man ran towards the creature. He hit it with a bottle. Glass and vodka flew everywhere. The beast growled, the sound reverberating through my body, sending unpleasant chills down my skin. It then slowly rised to its hind legs. It must have been tall as a bear. The man ran, or actually tried to run. The animal just locked its jaws around his neck and tore its head off. Blood splayed everywhere, even stained my clothes. It felt good. I knelt by the headless body and looked at the beast's face. What an ugly fucking mug it had. The face was long and pale under its black and wild locks. The jaw was massive and filled with rows upon rows of blood-stained teeth. Small silver-white crazed eyes stared at me, and the beast smiled. Oh, what a hideous smile it was. The devil's smile. Checking out my name in a voice eerily similar to the one in my head. My heart raced, and a cold sweat ran down my spine as the beast let out a drawn out "Joe Galileo." I'm unsure if that was fear or excitement, though. The beast started laughing right before lunging out a third man and biting off an enormous chunk out of his neck. The animal didn't attack everyone. Only 5 or 6 people died. The beast was very selective in those it mauled to death and tore to shreds. It felt like someone planned this whole thing. A fine-tuned execution as opposed to a feral massacre. It wouldn't be long on my part to say my wife is a witch. She made me feel like my 10-year-old self again. For one evening, that said, I could never imagine her bringing back Veselav as a rabid, undead man-wolf. That was a long one. Okay, Little Monsters was posted on r/horror stories, no capitals, by Bloody Spaghetti. I hope you loved that story as much as I did. I liked the gore, but I'm sorry I didn't give any content warning on the beginning. If I do edit this after recording it, I'm most definitely going to add a content warning for this one. I should probably just put this in. I'm apologetic for that. It was a very good story, very well detailed, and I liked the part where he said wife was a real witch. Okay, so this is the area that I said I made a waterfall. So self-promotion coming up soon. You can leave now. So with that said, thank you for watching Sergeant G. If you want, please like or subscribe. I'm trying to become a YouTuber, and you guys will be my first steps of becoming that. Thank you for watching my scary stories with me, and please have a great time. I hope you had a great time watching me, as I had a great time I am filming for you. And as always, have a fantastic day. Hee hee!